Hello. Welcome to this review, guys. My name is Cameron and I'm in the video today, strangely. It's Ultimate Spider-Man issue 70 and it's getting a little bit repetitive with 70 issues in, and I figured, you know what, now's like the perfect time to more or less jump into these videos. Maybe it's more interactive, maybe I just like talking to myself in an empty room. Going over to the comic side of things, in the previous issue we saw Spider-Man and Johnny Storm team up together and all this awesome stuff. It was brilliant, but that saga's ended. And now it's time to jump into the next one, introducing Doctor Strange, the Ultimates with Iron Man and Captain America. And this issue actually has a major impact on Peter Parker as well, so keep your eyes out for like stuff that happens, because, well, actually you can't even miss it. So yeah, we should probably get into the review, so let's do it. Alright, so the issue opens up with us joining Peter and Mary Jane on their romantic date, and I'm going to warn you guys now that this issue isn't really like all the other issues. There's a lot of dialogue, there's a lot of reminiscing on what's already happened, and so it makes this issue a little bit boring compared to the rest of them, but it's still interesting nonetheless. Now, from the very beginning of the comic, you can just tell that there's something not quite right about this situation that Mary Jane and Peter find themselves in. There's something really weird about Mary Jane and the questions she's asking, and just Peter's reaction to that. Now, throughout the entire issue, we get like this throwback dialogue of Peter narrating over what's already happened in the previous day or what's happened during the day, etc. And I think for the very first time in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, I actually don't like something for the majority of the issue. And it's this format of Peter narrating over everything that's happened earlier in the day. Like, it seems very generic, like we've just got some writing on the side of the screen that just goes down the pages, and then we've got pictures on the left, and it just seems very basic and very generic. And it almost makes me want to skip ahead. Even though it's awesome and it's still interesting, it just kind of makes me want to skip ahead. I would very much prefer it if the comic was put across to how it's coming up on the next page with the characters talking and the speech bubbles are actually coming out of their characters, etc. So I think the comic could have helped itself a little bit if it said something like earlier that day and then it's shown us like what actually happened instead of Peter narrating at the side for the majority of the issue. But luckily it fixes that, and of course we go back into the usual format of the characters talking and the speech bubbles coming out of their mouths, and it feels a lot more natural. Now, going into what just happened on screen, you could see the Ultimates, Captain America, Iron Man, Hawkeye, didn't really appreciate what Spider-Man did for them. He sort of saved their lives, he took care of the villain, and you can see that this really got under Spider-Man's skin. But I think Peter's reaction to this was already being antagonized by what had already happened in the comic. Like, Spider-Man was already in a bad mood when he got up to that situation. So the fact that the Ultimates didn't say anything to him like thank you or anything like that, I don't really think it was that bad. I think just Spider-Man being in a bad mood made it worse than it actually was. Now really, the Ultimates save people every day, it's all in a day's work, so Spider-Man jumping in there and just knocking out the bad guy, sure, it's very appreciative, but it's just an ordinary thing for a superhero to do. So you can see where Spider-Man is coming from, but then you also can't as well. I specifically love the addition of J. Jonah Jameson in this comic as well, because the only person to be able to put you in an even more bad mood than you already are is J. Jonah Jameson himself. So I thought it was hilarious how Jameson interacted with Peter because he was there basically to just push Peter further over the edge. And it's almost like he knew he was doing it and he didn't care. And that was awesome. It was even more interesting that whilst all of this was going on, at the back of your head and in the background of the comic, something still wasn't right, and Peter kind of knows that something's off, but he can't quite put his finger on it. I mean, he thinks he's met Doctor Strange before, but he doesn't know, but he thinks he has, and it's all a little bit crazy. And in the universe of Spider-Man, you know that something has to be pretty strange going on. No pun intended. Now, as we flip on over the page, we get the origin story of the Ultimate Universe's Doctor Strange, and it turns out that Doctor Strange, aka Stephen Strange, who we all know as Doctor Strange, went missing, he's disappeared, and his son has taken over the mantle of Doctor Strange. And that is such an interesting backstory for Doctor Strange in the Ultimate Universe. Like, you sort of get this sense that his son is trying to figure out how to get his father, Stephen Strange, back. Like, he knows he hasn't died or something. And this is the comic that introduces us to all of the crazy magical stuff and basically stuff that does not make sense in this reality. And I loved how we were introduced to that through what seemed like a TV series explaining and going into the depths of Doctor Strange's life. Pretty much like a reality TV show. It was awesome. Now, if you take a step back and you actually look at the comic as a whole, it's actually quite a dark comic. There's a lot of mysteriousness about it right from the beginning, especially because Mary Jane was in a black dress. The restaurant they went to was actually really dark. There's black tile flooring. It just doesn't seem right, and it just seems like there's only Peter and Mary Jane in the room as it should be. And one of the things I absolutely loved about this when it came up to it was look at the size of the table, look at the space between Peter and Mary Jane. When Peter started asking questions, when he started actually wondering why Mary Jane didn't know his age and everything, the length of the table expanded to like the length of the entire room, and that was, I think, to signify that Peter was distancing himself from Mary Jane because obviously he knew something wasn't right. And I love how the art style just suggests that. It's so empowering, and I don't know, it's just something that I really thought was awesome about the issue. Because obviously at the very beginning of the comic, the table was very small, they were on a date, they were very close to each other, and as the issue got further and further, the table got bigger. And now coming up to the final page of the issue, whatever Mary Jane is, whatever situation Peter Parker finds himself in is revealed. And whatever's happening has something to do with Doctor Strange and Peter jumping into that room as their crazy sorceress magic was going on. And something that was hilarious to me was the top right corner where Aunt May was in a wedding dress stood next to Green Goblin. Imagine that, that is crazy. I was actually rather surprised that it wasn't Dr. Octopus with Aunt May, considering in the 616 universe, Aunt May actually dated Dr. Octopus for a while, so yeah, pretty weird. Oh, there wasn't any audio. Alright, so the issues ended and it was awesome, but it was a little bit boring at the beginning, so I'd probably say around a 7 or 8 out of 10. In the next issue, we'll be seeing Doctor Strange and his companion, his partner or whatever it is, and they'll be brought into the Ultimate Universe. It will be awesome. And it'll also be pretty interesting to see what happens to Spider-Man in the next issue as well. But until then, guys, just let me know what you thought about me being on screen. Do you want me more on screen? Do you have any tips for me? What works, what doesn't work? Click one of these videos, check out the rest of the channel, and if you like this video, hit the like button, and if you want to stick around, then hit the subscribe button as well, and I'll see you next time.